Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Catalyzing Clarity Coaching with Dr. Tanya. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about disappointment. So, I'm sure that everyone here has been disappointed at one point or another in your life. And disappointment, although it's not an emotion that we would choose necessarily for ourselves, I wanted to offer a different perspective on it today and show you how you can use when you're disappointed to gain more awareness about your expectations and whether or not you want to keep those expectations and what actions you can take so that you may be less disappointed in the future or even now. So, first things first, I wanted to talk about the definition of disappointment. So disappointment happens, or you feel disappointment when you have expectations of how something is supposed to go or someone's supposed to act. It's just any kind of expectations. And then you have these expectations, and then the expectations in your mind are not met in some way. And therefore, you feel the feeling of disappointment. The most important thing about this is when you reflect on it, you can see that disappointment is entirely based on the expectations that you have. This is how, like, a result or an outcome, for example, like if somebody gave you $1, you might be disappointed because you were expecting something else, or $1 might not mean that much to you. But if somebody gave my 5-year-old, for example, $1, he would be thrilled because $1 to him is like, wow, so much money, or like any money at all. Or if you're not expecting something and then you get something, then you can see how that would change your feeling about the actual outcome. So one way to avoid disappointment, which I am not necessarily um, advocating for, is lowering your expectations. Because if you don't have any expectations, then you wouldn't feel disappointment. One thing about expectations is some of the expectations that we hold are really conscious to us, and we know, that we're expecting a certain outcome or people to act in a certain way. And sometimes when we know our expectations, we also express them. So, for example, with my kids, they have to get up at a certain time, and I'm like, it is, this time we have to get up. And I verbally express that to them, or even at bedtime I'll be like, remember, we have to get up at this certain time, so you have to go to sleep now, otherwise you'll be grumpy in the morning. However, we also have expectations that are maybe subconscious, or we're not completely aware of them, although we hold them, and they can be from our past, or just things that we've been telling ourselves for a long time. And sometimes these things are not expressed, and that can be difficult because then we're disappointed even though we've never expressed an expectation. Another thing about expectations that's important to know is it's important for us to really be clear about our own expectations so we can decide, number one, if we want to keep them, if they're reasonable. And if we do want to keep those expectations and that expectation is important to us, then we can also take steps to take action or express them to people or institutions or places that could help us meet that expectation, and communicate our expectations clearly to others so that we can all be on the same page. Also, sometimes it's good to know whether we're having expectations of things that are completely outside our control. So, for example, of the weather or traffic or any other things. And we can have expectations, of course, but when we have expectations of things outside of our control and then are disappointed when they don't go our way, um, we can just realize, why are we setting ourselves up for this kind of situation where we're going to be upset because of something outside of our control. So, to bring this all together, I kind of wanted to talk about 2 examples of times that I was disappointed this past week and show you how you can use this little exercise that I will discuss at the end of this little mini video to identify places where you're disappointed and then see if you can do something about them. So the first example is I love to go to this neighborhood Japanese restaurant. Our whole family really likes to go there, and they have a lunch set menu. And so sometimes I go there when I'm working from home to have lunch, or to give myself a little bit of a treat. So I hadn't been there for lunch in a couple months, probably because we were traveling, and I went there the other day, this past week, and they had a new menu for their lunch set. And I went over the menu, and it did not have my favorite um, menu item that I always order. My husband always orders it. I love it. I get it at lunch. And I was really disappointed because I was expecting to get my favorite lunch item, lunch set menu, and it was no longer on the menu. So I texted my husband. I was like, "Can you believe it? They don't have it anymore." Then I looked at the menu. I picked something else. And when the waitress came, I actually even ordered, um, my second choice, which was fine, but it's just not what I, truly wanted. And then I just asked her. I was like, "Oh, I see that, there's a new lunch menu. What happened to, the item that I always ordered?" And because I'm a regular there, she's just like, "Oh, yeah, you normally order, this item. And actually, we still have it. We're just not really advertising anymore because there's like limited quantity. And, these are the items that we're really trying to promote." But she was like, "Of course, you can have the favorite lunch set menu that you always have." And so that was an example of where I was disappointed, and it wasn't, the end of the world. Of course, there's other things on the menu that I can have, but I'd already told myself, like, "You're not going to have this. You're disappointed." I shared my disappointment with my husband, but when the waitress came, I just, mentioned to her and asked her, and then the answer was, "Yes, we still have it, and you can still have it." And so I think that was a lesson to me, to be like, don't shut yourself down before you've even tried or started. You can always ask. The answer can be yes or no. But if I hadn't asked, I would have, been disappointed and eaten my second choice and never have known that they still had this item on the menu for the future. So that's the first example. And then the second example is one with my son. So I'd been practicing swimming with him for the past week because we wanted him to try out for swim team, and he was also interested in trying out for it. And he's 7, so he just has to swim one of each of the different types of strokes, one lap of each type of different stroke. So I'd been working on it with him, before the tryout, and he had some issues, but I think, I was confident we worked through them. I was feeling really good about him going into the swim team tryout. And then we took him to the tryout, and we told him it doesn't matter, you just have to go out there and do your best and swim one lap of these 4 strokes. Uh, he did complete the 4 laps. He didn't do it in the order that he was instructed to, and he got a little confused in the middle of one of the laps, like he was doing one stroke and then he switched to another stroke. And overall, my husband and I thought that he did not swim up to his potential, and we were disappointed. And uh, when he finished the tryout, I went to talk to him, and I was like, "Oh, when you're doing first," I caught myself immediately. I was like, "When you're doing this stroke, you should have XYZ, or maybe work on this." And then I caught myself and I asked him, "Oh, how do you think like you swam, or how did the tryout go?" And he was not disappointed at all. He was like, "I thought I did well, or, I did good. I swam the 4 laps. I didn't stop, and I did all the strokes." And then that just brought back to me, like, he did what he was asked to do, and to him, it was a success. Even though to us, my husband and I, we were like, "Oh, he didn't live up to his potential, and he, you know, all the work that we put in wasn't manifested in his actual swimming." And when I was talking to my husband about it, we really had to re-examine, our own expectations and reframe uh, our own disappointment, because what was our expectation? Like that he, would swim at the best, at, his best capability. And his expectation was, I'm going to, go out there, do what was asked of me to the best of my ability. And then he thought he did do that, to the best of his ability. And I really wanted to tell him before the tryout, and what we really want to teach, when I talk to my husband, what we really want to teach our children is that, trying your best, and your best is enough. And I told my husband, that was his best for today. And he did complete all 4 laps. He didn't stop. He did, what we asked him to do. And um, even though we thought, you know, we had an expectation, he met his own expectation. And in the end, we were proud of him. And so in that instance, I had to just revisit my expectations and then choose like whether or not I wanted to keep on being disappointed or to be proud of him for showing up and completing the task. So I think there are many instances in life where you can think about a job where you might be disappointed in an aspect of it, or a relationship where somebody doesn't show up the way you want, or maybe you didn't show up the way you want. And so I'd like you all to think of a time that you've been disappointed this week, or if you haven't been disappointed at all, you could pay attention to the next time you might feel disappointed. And there's a 4-step process that I invite you to reflect upon. Number 1 is just noticing that you're disappointed and naming the feeling. So it's really interesting. There's research that shows that once you name the feeling and even like say it out loud, or bring awareness to say like, I, Tanya, am feeling disappointed, then that really actually dissipates the emotion and lets you just, think more clearly about it. So that would be the number 1 thing, is just to notice when you're disappointed. And then the second step is to be curious about it, and be specifically curious about, why am I feeling disappointed? What are my expectations in this situation? And like, why are they unmet, for example? So in the example of my son's swimming tryout, my expectation was, he would swim like at his absolute best ability, and he, would do awesome, and he would make the team, and all my work would have paid off. And so I think that thinking about what your expectations are, and then after you know what your expectations are, you can also ask yourself, what am I making this mean? What am I making the expectations mean? So, live up to your full potential. What am I making it mean? All the work that I did, like it didn't matter because he didn't swim, at this level, he swam at this level. So it was really interesting for me to just reflect on like, what am I making it mean about me, as a mom, or anything like that. And then the third step is, do you want to keep this expectation? And do you think it's reasonable or unreasonable? Or, what are your reasons for having this expectation? And you can reflect on whether or not that's something that you want to keep. In this example of my son, I did not want to keep that unreasonable expectation of him, so I decided, to let it go. But if you have an expectation that you do want to keep, then it's good to examine your reasons for it, and just, have your own back about the reasons that you have this expectation and you're going to keep it. And also, number 4 is, if you have an expectation and you want to keep it, and you like your reasons for it, which is the most important, then you can ask or share your expectations with others. And then this can help you, not be disappointed in the future, or to clear up any confusion about what your expectation may be. So if you'd like more information or want to work through how to deal with disappointment in your life or expectations, you can contact me. My email is Tanya, TWANSOM@CheyenneConsulting.com. And let me know how it goes. You can comment in the comment section below, or email me, or get more coaching. Thanks for listening.